situation right now is sort of in a flux. The junta that is purporting to have taken over the government has not effectively succeeded. They are somewhat in between succeeding and just a mere attempt. I would liken this to the Zimbabwean experience under President Mugabe. For a military coup to be successful, two fundamental issues must be present. One, the takeover must be effective. Secondly, the new regime, the junta that comes into power, has to have control and often suspend the constitution and enact military resolutions which will be enforced until the transition is sort of completed seamlessly. But those characteristics and attributes of a successful military coup seem to be lacking. So I am quite skeptical to say, I think France, there are reports from France that, they're saying this is not a really successful military coup. I mean, the president also has his supporters, although the military are behind the junta, quite all right. But it's a very sort of convoluted process right now. It's very unclear.
So, right, given the history of coups in Niger, do you think that President Bazoum missed certain elements that a coup was imminent?
Niger has had 4 military coups, I think, since independence. And if you look at the Sahel region, especially Central Africa and West Africa, from 2020 to date, this is during the COVID pandemic, there have been about 7 military coups in that region. And so this is somewhat spreading like a little pandemic of military coups into the neighboring countries. Look at Burkina Faso, look at Mali, and so forth. So one, of course, would want to believe that the president should have foreseen this coming. The arguments that, 2 fundamental arguments that the junta is pushing. One, that there's security concerns in the country. The second one is about governance, economic and social governance, that, this has really collapsed, and so they're coming in to restore this. These are the 2 arguments in the France they are using because of course, the security situation, the jihadists coming from the neighboring Sahel region. So, but again, the president, Bazoum, has had good relationships with a number of Western countries, the US in particular, to try and fight off these insurgents, jihadists. So it will be interesting to see how it plays out and how much support he may get despite being under confinement from his Western allies, and how the junta will move this forward.
Professor, what does the international law say about coups such as the one in Niger?
A coup, if it succeeds, like I pointed out, if it meets those 2 criteria, effective takeover and you are in control, well and good. It's now a question of finding political legitimacy to be recognized not as a state, but as a government. In international law recognition, there are 2 types of recognition. There's that of a state and the government. And also there's what we call de jure and de facto recognition. So far, we have not seen any form of de facto or de jure recognition whatsoever regarding the junta. But the United Nations Charter is somewhat silent on internal sort of infractions or dispute or conflict in a country, because the basis of international law is that other states cannot interfere unless they are invited to sort of help with the situation. There are only 3 instances in international law where there could be external interference. One, under the UN Security Council resolution. If the UN Security Council makes that decision, that let's have a joint collective action. Secondly is when there's issue of self-defense against maybe external aggression, your neighboring state. The third one is when you're invited in by the states that's under siege to say, come and help us as a neighboring country, you can move in. So right now, the international community is just sort of watching. There have been statements from Moscow, statements from Africa Union, statements from Washington, statements from Paris. So it's a very delicate situation right now.